nice. Richard and Eugenia, David, Saul, how you doing? And Leslie, beautiful. All right, folks, today we're going to start something different. We're going to do some Talmud. It's called Yaakov. It's Talmudic Teachings. We're not going to do the heavy duty torts and damages and that stuff. Not quite yet. Hopefully we'll get there one day. But we're not going to start there. I'm actually going to start from the beginning, believe it or not. In Berachos, the tractate of Berachos. And we're going to do that every Monday. And I want to have some feedback, please. What you think of it. If you enjoy it. If you follow it. If it's too difficult. That's very important for me to, to know that it's something that you are gaining. Because if you're not gaining from it, you're not learning from it, that's not good. Now, studying Talmud is a different, kind of headspace that you need. Even though what we're doing, Ein Yaakov, is more the Agadata, which is more the storyline stuff, as opposed to the, again, the, very hair-splitting arguments that you can have that are fascinating, intriguing. You could really lose a pound or two just in the sweat of dealing with studying that area of the Talmud. We spoke about diets earlier today. There's another way to diet. But we're not going there right now. So we're going to go into, let's go right into it. Got this here. Okay. Share the screen. Do you see it in front of you? Yeah, Saul?
See a list? Yes, a list of...
Oh, sorry, I got the wrong thing in front of you. Hold on. Let's try that again. Oh. Okay, no, I want screen 2. I shared the wrong thing. Okay, there we go. You got it?
Got it.
Beautiful. Okay. Is it large enough that you can read?
No.
Oh, that's not good. Okay. How's that?
That's right. A little better. It's okay. I'm okay.
If you pinch the screen, you can make it wider. You can make it bigger.
That's what
That's what I just did. I just did it. That's what I just did.
Good.
All right. Okay.
Thanks.
So, Me'emas HaKohen is Shema B'Arvin. This Mishnah asks, from when, that is from what time does one recite the Shema? In the evening. That is the beginning of the tractate of Berachos. So, commentators ask a question. Why did Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, who lived in the 2nd century of the Common Era, he lived about 100 years after the destruction of the Second Holy Temple. Why did he choose to begin this is the beginning of writing down the oral Torah in the Mishnah. Why did he begin with the mitzvah Shema? So the Rambam Maimonides explains, because the Shema is part of the tractate of Berachos. Berachos means blessings. And You need to make a blessing over food that sustains life. So he started off with the order of zeroim, of food that sustains life, making a blessing over them. And we also have a blessing in the Shema. Preceding the Shema, we have blessings of the Shema. They call Berachos Kriya Shema, the blessing of Shema. We don't start with the blessings of the Shema because we start with the Shema itself, and then we go into the blessings of the Shema. That's what Maimonides explains. In another Sefer, Shiltei Geborim explains, because the beginning of all wisdom is the acceptance of God as our king. The Shema is the acceptance of God as our king. So that's why we begin with the Shema. And then the Chidah explains is because what are we starting with the Shema? We're starting with the mitzvah of reciting the Shema at night. Because when you become bar mitzvah, the first mitzvah that you have that you can fulfill is saying the Shema. Because when do you become bar mitzvah? At nighttime. You become bar mitzvah at nighttime. Hence, the first mitzvah that you can fulfill is saying the Shema. And that's why this is the first thing that we deal with. So again, 3 different explanations. One is blessings we need to know about, because we need to make blessings in order that we can eat. Food sustains life. The blessings of the Shema, but before we start with the blessings of the Shema, we start with the Shema itself. Second explanation, all wisdom begins with, hey, it's interesting, all wisdom doesn't begin with wisdom. All wisdom begins with your relationship with God, that you accept God as your king. That was the second explanation, and that's what the Shema is. Shema is twice a day, right? What we're supposed to think before we say the Shema, that the intent, the mindfulness that we need to have is, I'm accepting God as king, all right? And then the third explanation is, because this is the first mitzvah you could ever fulfill when you become of age. Become of age, the first mitzvah is the Shema, because nighttime is when the day begins. So nighttime become obligated in mitzvahs. The first mitzvah you can fulfill is the Shema. 3 different explanations of why the Talmud, or rather the Mishneh in particular, because we're learning the Mishneh now, the Talmud, the Gemara part, which is now incorporates and makes the entire Talmud, will be the part that follows the Mishneh. Okay, so let us continue. Okay, so from what time that is the one recites the Shema in the evening? So the Mishnah responds from the time that when the priests enter to partake of their Truma, right? That's when it begins, the obligation. Now later on, we're going to go into why in such a convoluted way. Why don't you just say when? Why do you have to say when the priests enter to partake in the Truma? Like answer the question directly. It's an indirect answer, and then we have to ask the question, oh, so when do the priests enter? So you're just moving the question to another, just one generation, so to speak. Okay, and until when does the time of the recitation of the evening Shema extend? So we know the beginning, or we're going to get into that. So until the end of the first watch, the term used in the Torah to indicate that the time for the recitation of the evening Shema is the Shavbacha, when people lie down. This refers to the time when the individuals go to sleep. Therefore, the time for the recitation of the Shema is the first portion of the night, when individuals typically prepare for sleep. That is the statement of Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer says, it says in the verse, well, all questions need to be answered from a source. His source is, of course, where the Shema is. The Shema is Ubeshachbacha uvkumecha. Ubeshachbacha means when you lie down. So what does it mean when you lie down? What does that word mean? When you go to lie down? When you're lying down? What does it mean exactly? So the answer says, when you go to lie down. When you go to lie down, the first watch. Actually, there's an argument. What does the first watch mean? So there's an argument that in the Talmud, in another place, that the evening is divided into 3 or 4 watches, segments, in other words. Each segment has its own unique properties. And hence, because of the unique properties, there's the praise of angels that are engaged in those unique watches, those unique segments of time as a result. So Rabbi Eliezer says the first watch, the first segment of the night. Why the first segment? Because that's generally when people go to sleep. And where do we take that from? From the word uveshachbecha, as we say in the Shema, when you go to lie down. Now, when you're lying down, when you go to lie down, that's his opinion. The Chachamim, the rabbis, the majority of opinions say the time of recitation of the Shema is until midnight. The first watch would be only a third of the night or a fourth of the night, depending on how do you look, you look, is it divided into 3 or 4? That's a different discussion. According to, the sages, the majority of sages of opinion, which by the way then becomes the law, according to them. So they say until midnight. Now, midnight, where did they get that from? What's the source for midnight? Well, we'll get there in a moment, but think about it. A source has to be from where? The Torah. So if the source is from the Torah, sorry, anybody sharing some? If you are writing something in the chat, I don't see it right now. So the way it's set up, for some reason, I can't see the chat. Okay. So if you have something to a question or whatnot, please, you have to verbally ask it right now because I can't see I don't know why not, but for some reason. Okay. In any case, so if the source is the word of b'shachbecha, when you lie down, well, where's midnight fit in? Good question, right? We'll get there. Let's continue. Rebbe Gamliel says, what does our Rebbe Gamliel say? He says, one may recite the Shema until dawn, indicating that the word of b'shachbecha is to be understood, not when you go down to lie down to go to sleep, but the entire time when people sleep in their beds, the whole night. Unless you get very old and you wake up in the middle of the night, you got to use the bathroom, and then then all of a sudden you see, oh, maybe there's something interesting that I could watch. So, uveshachbecha, Rebbe Gamliel says that that's not how you understand that word. It doesn't mean when you go to sleep, but it means when you are sleeping. And therefore, it's until dawn, because who else sleeps beyond dawn? Right? Okay, don't answer that question. That's what Rebbe Gamliel says. So now the question is, of course, the opinion goes according to the sages, the majority of opinion. But where do they get midnight from? Like, where does that fit in? It doesn't fit in with the verse. Where do they get their thoughts from? So what we're going to see over here is interesting. A story that will show that really the sages do not disagree with Rebbe Gamliel. Rebbe Gamliel said what did Rebbe Gamliel say? Until dawn, correct? Said until dawn, as he is based on the verse. The sages do not disagree. But why do they say till midnight? So what we're going to see is that that through this story that we're going to tell now is that that there's another thing to take into consideration. And what is that? The biblical law is indeed until dawn, as the sages will agree. The question is, what are the unique purpose of the sages? Anybody know? What are they, besides giving us perspective on the teachings and letting us know what the word uvashach means, right? We need them for that, to understand what that word means and how to apply that in Jewish law. Fine, but what else did the sages do? The sages make sure they have the responsibility that there's going to be continuity of Jewish life. The Jews are going to keep mitzvahs. How do they make sure of that? Well, sometimes they need to put a fence around the law. Sometimes they need to add a new law, right? A rabbinic law, not a biblical law, a rabbinic law, in order to increase the observance, the connection, the continuity of the Jewish people. That's their responsibility. Well, being that that's their responsibility to ensure the continuity of Jewish observance and the Jewish people, then they have to make certain that the mitzvah of the Shema, everybody's going to observe properly. So what could be the problem that if you're going to be able to say the Shema until dawn, right, and you got all this time in front of you, and you're up late, what's going to happen? You're going to push off. Human nature is to be procrastinating and to push off. So the sages have the responsibility to make sure that people shouldn't push it off. So what happened? The biblical law is until dawn. The sages agree with Rabbi Gamliel. However, being human nature is such that we will procrastinate. They say you should only do it until midnight. You should only say the Shema till midnight. Why? To ensure that you don't procrastinate and that you say it in a timely fashion, because if you will procrastinate, you may forget and you may miss the opportunity. And we're talking about the opportunity of doing a mitzvah that brings, and in Kabbalistic mystical teachings, and as we learn in the Tanya, a union between the male and female parts of God, that you bring a new light into this world and you change the world. And you bring this light into the world. You don't want to miss that opportunity. So let's continue with the story to bring that idea across. So the Mishnah relates that Rabbi Gamliel practiced in accordance with his ruling. There was an incident when Rabbi Gamliel's sons returned very late from a wedding hall. They went to a wedding, right? It was a joyful time. They were dancing and bringing joy to the bride and the groom. So they said to their father, as they had been preoccupied with celebrating with the groom and the bride. And by the way, is that a mitzvah? What happens when you have that mitzvah? And let's say that mitzvah is all encompassing and you have no time to stop to do that in that mitzvah. Then what is the law is, when you're involved in one mitzvah, you're absolved from another mitzvah. So you're involved in the mitzvah of bringing joy, not to yourself. That's not a mitzvah. That's called self-indulgence. But bringing joy to the bride and the groom, that is a mitzvah. You're involved in that the whole time. They didn't have time to say the Shema, so now they came back from the wedding celebration, and they said to their father, we did not recite the Shema. So he said to them, if the dawn has not yet arrived, you will be obliged to recite the Shema. Since Rabbi Gamliel's opinion disagreed with the rabbis, he explained to his sons that the rabbis actually agree with him, and that not only they agree with him, that in other words, you could recite the Shema until dawn, right? And not only with regard to the halacha of recitation of the Shema, but rather wherever the sages say until midnight, the mitzvah may be performed until dawn. And now he gives this example. But before we get there, is that clear? Any questions on that before we go further?
Rabbi,
Oh, yes.
Sorry,
Rabbi? Yes, go ahead.
can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
What happens if someone falls asleep before they say the bedtime Shema, and then they wake up in the middle of the night? Can they still say it?
That's exactly what happened over here. Oh, you mean you're asking the question because maybe they weren't involved in a mitzvah before. They were only involved in sleep. So
Right.
is this only if because they were involved in another mitzvah, therefore they didn't have the opportunity to fulfill this mitzvah? No, it's anybody who did not fulfill the mitzvah. They fell asleep and they woke up and they realized it didn't say the Shema. Say the Shema. Exactly. You should probably, if you slept more than half an hour, you need to wash negelvas, so you need to wash your hands back and forth, 6 times. But aside from that, absolutely, you should say the Shema, even if it was, accidentally fell asleep, or even on purpose you fell asleep and you just, you forgot. Absolutely, you should do it. Good
Thank
question.
you.
Rabbi,
Thank you, Saul. Go ahead.
Rabbi,
Yes, Saul.
does this refer to Ma'ariv also?
Well, good question. Thank you. So Mariv is not a biblical law. It's something actually it's not even rabbinic law to be quite.
Yeah.
I mean, it is halacha that we have the mitzvah to say to do Mariv, but we have to be careful when we use the word mitzvah. Because mitzvah is a very it's sort of like an all-encompassing word. It's a very general, broad word, and it's also very narrow. In the broad sense, a mitzvah is you did something good. You helped a little old lady from Pasadena with her grocery bags across the street. That's beautiful. It's wonderful to do such a thing, right? That is the idea of a mitzvah. That is in a broad sense. I mean, even though you could say that that's also specific mitzvah means biblical command. Shema is a biblical command. Mariv, the evening service, is not a biblical command. It's a halacha. There's a responsibility and obligation that we have to say Mariv, yes, but it's not a biblical law. So here we're speaking about biblical law, the Mishneh, because firstly, those are the, I don't want to say that's more important. We should not be weighing mitzvahs in that respect. But it carries more stringent weight, shall we say, because it's a biblical law. But Mariv will be dealt with. I don't remember where exactly now in Berachos. It will, because it's about Berachos is all about prayers and blessings and so on. So it will be dealt with. But we're starting here with, of course, the biblical commandment. And now, of course, when we say the Shema, quite often, how do we do it? In the middle of the Mariv service. But we'll get more into that. Good question. Excellent question. Any other questions? We go further. Reggie, clear? We're good?
So it's morning blessings, then you say the Shema during Chakras, and then you say it Mariv, and then before you go to bed as well. So it ends up being a total of 4 times. Is that correct?
Well, no, it's actually 3 times. Well, I mean, you could say 4 times because you're right. In the Shachris service, there is a small Shema that we say that you have the one paragraph as a preparatory before the actual service will begin. So, but again, to separate, the bedtime Shema is not a biblical commandment. Unless you didn't do the Mariv Shema, then you're going to fulfill the biblical commandment when you say the bedtime Shema. So,
Okay.
Here we're only speaking about the biblical commandment that we have, and right now we're only speaking about the evening time, right? But and we will get
Yes.
to the Shachris. But you're correct in what you're saying. You're correct in what you're saying. There is in the morning service we have before we the preparatory stuff, like with the offering sacrifices and all those things. We speak about daily. We remember Abraham bringing Isaac, Yitzchak on the altar, right? And that's all. And right after that we have the one paragraph of the Shema. So absolutely, we have all of that. And then we have the biblical commandment that we fulfill in the Shachri service. Now, let me actually back up for a second, and thank you for bringing this up, Reggie, because it's important. Shabbos, so here at Chabad, the Chabad Zikrim, we begin our davening at 9:30, and usually 9:30 is, as we will learn, perhaps we'll learn later. I don't remember all the things we're going to learn here because we're not learning everything on order. All of the teachings, we're learning only certain elements of it. But the morning Shema on Shabbos, often we will say it after the time that we're supposed to, and we'll get into that. When you're supposed to again. So therefore, you should make sure you say before a third of the day passes and fulfill the mitzvah appropriately. So sometimes you need to do it before you even go to synagogue on Shabbos. Weekday, usually we're davening earlier, so it's not a problem to get it in the appropriate time. Is that answer you, Reggie?
Yes. So if you're not in a minyan, you would preface it with is it you say God is a faithful king? Is that true?
Oh, Kale, good question. There's different customs and different. You could do that. Some people do it, and some people don't. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could. Very good. Very good. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure. So Linda's asking the question why women are not time bound by time bound mitzvahs, which Shema includes. So the women do not have an obligation to say the Shema in a specific time. They should say the Shema twice a day, right? But they're not time bound to fulfill the mitzvah. Do they need to say the mitzvah to say the Shema? Absolutely, because you need to pray to Hashem. So you need to you need to say the Shema as part of your prayers, absolutely. But it doesn't need to be time bound. And the reason why women are not time bound is because women transcend time. I'm so surprised you didn't know that one. Women transcend time, obviously, right? So women are not time bound on a simple level because women have more important obligations of taking care of family, taking care of little ones, big ones, and just inherent to their makeup of being receptive to the divine, right? It's something we spoke about earlier about Shekhinah, right? To the divine. So therefore, because of that natural receptiveness, they don't need to make sure that they are on schedule, because they're never on schedule. No, no, because they're beyond it. Okay, is that clear? Is that good? Thank you for that question. Okay. Okay. Let us get to the next part over here of the teachings. So Reverend Gamliel cites several cases in support of his claim. What was his claim? Reverend Gamliel says that you can say the Shema until dawn. Furthermore, he says the sages also believe that. Not only that, even when the sages said that the mitzvah is till midnight, right? They agree with him. They're really, the essential obligation is until dawn. And he says that this is also concerning other areas where they made the same claim, that it's only till midnight, as burning of the fats in the limbs on the altar. Due to the quantity of offerings each day, the priests were often unable to complete the burning of all of the fats and limbs, so they continued to be burned into the night, as it is written. This is the law of the burnt offering. The burnt offering shall remain upon the pyre on the altar all night until morning, while the fire on the altar burns, as it says in Leviticus and Vayikra. And with regard to all sacrifices, so that's as far as the fats and the limbs that need to be, and I'll explain a little more on this in a moment. And with regard to all sacrifices, such as the sin offering and the guilt offerings that are eaten for one day and a night, although the sages state that they may be eaten only until midnight by Torah law, they may be eaten until dawn. This is in accordance to the verse, on the day on which it is offered, must you eat. Do not leave it until the morning, as it says in Leviticus a couple of weeks ago in the Parsha. If so, why did the sages say that it may be eaten only until midnight? This is in order to distance a person from transgression. As if one believes that he has until dawn to perform the mitzvah, he might be negligent and postpone it, right? Until the opportunity to perform the mitzvah has passed. So, what do we have? Offerings on the altar, right, have to be eaten to a certain time. The part that's eaten, but then there's part that's put on the altar that's burnt, right? That part that's burnt is different. There's different, depending on what kind of offering it is, it will be to a different time period. Either it starts during the day and through the night. So through the night means until dawn, as Rabbi Gamliel said. The sages said it should only be till midnight. Again, why? Not because essentially you can't do it beyond that, but just to safeguard that a person shouldn't be negligent and forget to do it because you procrastinate in doing it, right? This is the importance. Now, when it comes to eating, so there's two things. There's the fats on the altar, but then there's also the things that could be eaten. Parts of like a shlomim, a peace offering, the Kohen can eat it, and even the person who brought it also gets to eat from it. But if they're going to procrastinate, you know what could happen? They might eat it past the deadline of dawn. And if they do that, there's a very harsh punishment. The Torah says you get kores, that you would have an early passing. You would be, not from a court of law, but from the hands of heaven, you would pass away at an early age. Why? Because you weren't careful to eat it before dawn. So therefore, the sages were very concerned that a person should, you don't know exactly when dawn is, and maybe you realize, oh my gosh, not supposed to have this left over. You're supposed to eat it, and I didn't get the chance to eat it yet. And now you're eating it, and you think it's before dawn, but maybe it's not, and you did it mistakenly. Mistakenly doesn't mean you're not liable. It's like you can mistakenly eat poison, but the effect is the effect. So this is what this is what our sages are saying here. Okay. Is that clear? Any questions on this? Okay, so I'm going to go a little further. I'm going to just do a little bit more. This was the easy part because it was the Mishnah. Now we're going to go into a piece of Talmud. Oops. How did I get this here? Hi, 1 second. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay. So the Gemara proceeds to clarify the rest of the Mishnah. Master said in the Mishnah that the beginning of the period when one recites Shema in the evening is when the priests enter to partake of their Truma. Right? Truma, let me explain. The Kohanim, as we call them here, priests, do not have any land in the land of Israel. Their job is to work as servants of Hashem in the Holy Temple. Hashem gave them in exchange of their work that they get Truma. Truma means a portion of the agrarian society that the people lived in. Actually, until 200 years ago, most of society, 300 industrial revolution, 300 years ago, most people were agrarian. So they would have to take tithes. That's actually Meiser. That's actually Meiser, which Meiser goes to the Levite. But Truma, that goes to the Kohen and be able to eat it. But a Kohen can't eat the Truma if he's impure. So let's say the Kohen, for whatever reason, like last week's Parsha, right, Nadav and Avihu pass away, and a Kohen is in the room there where they pass away. Or they weren't in the room there because they were in the Holy of Holies, but right, let's say you were in a room where someone passed away. If you're a Kohen, you're impure. That's why a Kohen doesn't go to a cemetery to become impure. So you need to go to the mikvah, and then nightfall, you become pure. So this is what saying, when the priests would partake in the Truma, however, this does not specify definitive time. The Talmud says, when do the priests enter to partake of their Truma? From the time of the emergence of the stars. If that is the case, why let the Tana teach that the time of the recitation of the evening Shema is from the time of the emergence of the stars? So remember, I asked the question, we want to know what time you're supposed to say the Shema at night. So we say from when the Kohen goes to eat Truma. So now we're asking, well, when does the Kohen eat Truma? Oh, that's when the stars come out. So then why don't you just say that when do you say the Shema? When the stars come out. Good question, huh? Whoops. There we go again. So the Gemara responds, that's the question the Gemara asks. So the Gemara responds, indeed, it would have been simpler to say that the time for the recitation of the evening Shema begins with the emergence of the stars, but the particular expression used by the Tana teaches us another matter in passing. We learn two tricks with one stone. Well, two tricks with one thought. Two messages here. When did the priest partake in the Truma? From the time of the emergence of the stars. And the Tana teaches us a new halacha, a new law, parenthetically. Failure to bring atonement offering does not prevent the priest from eating Truma. Okay, let me explain. And the sun sets, it is purified. The setting of the sun prevents him from partaking in Truma, but failure to bring atonement and offering do not prevent him from partaking of Truma. Okay, so let me explain over here. Everybody with me? Whoever can show their camera, amazing. That would be great to see you. So I want to step back for a moment. What are we learning now? The oral Torah, correct, right? we're learning the oral Torah in the Mishnah, that it's written down for the first time. Just think about it, folks. It was 1900 years ago, or a little over 1800 something years ago, right? It was first written down. That means for about a similar amount of time, 1800 years of Jewish history and Jewish civilization, the oral Torah was oral. It wasn't written down. So when Yehuda Anasi, Judah the prince, when he wrote it down, what did he want to keep, what's the word, cognizant of? What did he want to keep aligned with? The fact that it's the oral Torah. So he wanted to write it down in such a way that it should leave its oral flavor. It's written, but it's written in concise fashion. It's written in a way that it will teach us more than just one thing at the same time. So therefore, instead of just saying when the stars come out, it says, oh, when the Kohanim go and eat their Truma. Because in that, it's teaching us another teaching. And we needed to know that because 300 years after that, the Gemara was written down, which we just started learning the Gemara, right, to explain the Mishnah. Because we were afraid of losing even more of the understanding of what the nuance of the Mishnah was. So we needed the Gemara to be written down in order that we can have that teachings. But it's always left, so to speak, as much as is said, much is unsaid. Much is between the lines. Much is an inference and an implied teachings to keep the oral flavor of the teachings. Why keep the oral flavor? That's a good question for many reasons. One is, ultimately, you still need a teacher to come to. Who went to a teacher? Who went to a teacher? Who went to a teacher? All the way to Yehuda the prince, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. So there's a continuity. You can't just take your 4,734 Penguin classics called Talmud and go off on some place and become a Talmudic scholar all on your own. No, you need a teacher. Who had a teacher? Meaning there's still an oral flavor. There's between the lines. So you need that teacher for that. You need a teacher for many other things too, but just for that instance alone. So therefore, it's written in such a fashion that there has to be said a lot in a little. So therefore, he doesn't say just clearly when do you say the Shema? Well, when the stars come out. But no, when the Kohen goes to eat their Truma. Now, first of all, so then, of course, that begets the question, when is that? Oh, so that's when the stars come out. But that's teaching us also another thing. What's it teaching us? A Kohen who becomes impure. Remember, a Kohen can only serve in the Holy Temple in purity. They also would have an early passing if they served impure from the hands of heaven, early passing, right? Now, purity has many different gradations of it. Basic is purity by going to the mikvah. That's the basic idea of you became purified because you immersed yourself in the mikvah, and therefore you came in contact, let's say, with a corpse, right? For example, I think that's a good example, if I remember correctly. I think the only thing that necessitates, if I remember correctly, is that. But this week's Torah portion is about a matzera, leprosy, not modern day leprosy, but an old age kind of leprosy, a skin disease. If the Kohen was impure because he contacted leprosy, so it's not enough just to go to the mikvah to be no longer right. You have to bring also a sacrifice to achieve atonement, for atonement. Now, atonement you need in order that you could eat sacrificial meat as a Kohen. Remember, a Kohen serving in the base of Mikdash. She's serving in the altar. There are sacrifices that are brought. There are meats that they have to eat. That in the eating of it brings the atonement for the one who brought it. So that's part of their duty. Oh, no vegans here. Right? That's part of their duty. They got to do that. But that's the duty of serving in the Beis HaMikdash, right? And eating the meats, sacrificial meats, you have to have atonement. But then there's other things that you have as a Kohen. What's that called? Truma. Truma is not sacrificial. Truma is the exchange that you have that the Israelite gives to you from their portion of their profit, right? Of that, what they reap, that they give to you in exchange for, the fact that you don't have any land to develop and have your own produce. That you have to be pure to eat, but not atoned to eat. So when do you get atoned? When you went to the mikvah and night comes. Is that clear? See the distinction? Kohen has different elements in his life. The eating of Truma. Now, a Kohen can eat regular food, right? The regular store-bought food, shall we say, they can eat that. Impure. But Truma, since it does have some kind of, I don't know, holiness, I guess a holiness to it, in a sense. I don't know if the word holiness is the right term. It has some kind of kedusha. It has some, it has to be eaten in purity. Purity means you went to the mikvah and night came, so that the previous day passed. Now you're starting a new beginning because nightfall is the new beginning of the day, right? Now you can eat the truma. But sacrificial meat in the holy temple, that's a different story. That you need atonement for. So what does when do you say Shema? When the Kohen is allowed to eat from his truma, not sacrificial meat. Because when is that? When he went to the mikvah. Now the stars came out, nightfall came. That's the Gemara explaining that part in the Mishnah. Is that clear? With that, we finish today's class. Anybody have a headache? Can I have some feedback, please? Is this enjoyable? Is this something you like to do? We're going to do it once a week on Mondays. Is that the plan? Is that good?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Amazing.
Great understanding. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. Who else wants to share?
Loved it.
Okay. Thank you, Saul. Great. Reggie?
Absolutely awesome. Yes.
All right. Wow. You know what you're going to make me, guys? You're going to make me talk about tshuva. Yeah, really. I'll tell you why. I made a resolve that I have to, I teach Tanya and I teach Hasidic teachings, and I don't do sufficient learning for myself of Talmudic teachings, of Nigla, of this aspect of Jewish teachings, and when was it now? It was for the Rebbe's birthday. I wanted to give him a birthday gift. I think I told you about it, right?
Yeah, for the Rebbe.
You remember, Irma, right? So I said to the Rebbe, I'm going to give the Rebbe a birthday gift. And what's a gift? Of doing something that I wouldn't even say it's out of my comfort zone. In a sense, it's out of my comfort zone because I'm just not as into it, right? Not as into it as in Tanya and other Hasidic teachings and so on and so forth. I enjoy this immensely, but you get into your routine. And that's what I was doing. So I had to get out of my routine. What's out of my routine? To teach some Talmud. That's out of my routine. And that was the gift I gave to the Rebbe. And now you're all part of that gift.
Rabbi,
Yes, Saul.
it's very interesting in the debate on the curfew that the Hasidic community made to the government of Quebec in the courts. They used the argument, the legitimate argument, that they cannot say Ma'ariv till the stars came out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Very good, Saul. That's right. The Superior Court accepted the fact that, well, no, actually that didn't go to the Superior Court.
No, lower court.
Right. Yeah. No. But that what went that you could have more than one room of.
That was a different argument.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Very good.
But they're recently against the curfew.
Yeah. So we have a big challenge over here with the curfew. But as Jews, we always figure out ways and means.
To do it.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, folks, so this is great. Tomorrow we will do Pirkei Avot, we'll do Jewish ethics, and we'll do this on Mondays, okay? Unless, I don't know if you guys want to do more of this or you want to do Pirkei Avot more. Tell me what your thoughts are on that. Anybody?
I like to do this.
You like this, okay?
I enjoyed this. So for a start.
Okay. Anybody else? Who would like, should we do 2 days of this, Monday and Tuesday of this, Wednesday and Thursday Pirkei Avot, Jewish ethics, and Friday the Parsha?
Sounds excellent.
Is that good?
That's good. Yeah.
Yes, that's good.
That's
That's
good.
good. Yeah.
Okay. That means you have to come. You have to do it. All right. Not only you have to come, but you have to bring a friend. All right.
Can do that.
Tomorrow we continue. All right. Tomorrow we continue. Great. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Sei gesund. Be well. Have a wonderful day. And good Chodesh. A wonderful, good new month. Be well.